Welcome everyone to the IRT webinar. This is our eighth webinar that we've resurrected, co-hosted by Hayden Davies with Auto Recycling World. I'm Steve Fletcher from the Auto Recyclers of Canada. This topic is accreditation in the auto recycling sector, building trust in recycled original equipment parts. And like all things that the IRT does, we try to bring the global auto recycling community together to share ideas and best practices and initiatives that we can learn from one another. But it's also an opportunity for non-auto recyclers to get a peek into our world and how we operate, why we operate, and the things that we think are important. And accreditation is something that various communities are all working on. And again, like the things that the IRT tackles or addresses, we're not really pushing one solution. Every market is on a different path, but we know that there's benefits in hearing from what other jurisdictions are doing, learning, and hopefully connecting to see how further sharing can happen offline. We have two great speakers today, two people I've known for quite a while. We have Kristi Werner, who's the CEO of the United Recyclers Group, URG. And we also have Chris Daglis, who's the Managing Director of Auto Partnered Solutions. Kristi is calling in from South Dakota, so it's very early for her, so thank you very much. And Chris is calling in from Australia, so it's very late for him. We've got about 75 minutes, give or take, in terms of time. We're going to have each speaker talk for about 20 minutes or so, and then have lots of room at the end for comments, questions. We're going to handle those questions at the end, and if you could utilize the chat feature of the Zoom function, Hayden's going to be kind of monitoring those and going to be handling that Q&A at the very end. So I'm going to turn things over to Kristi. And if you can share your screen, then you could utilize that on site for your talking. So welcome, Kristi.
Thank you, Steve. I'm happy to be on here. For those of you that don't know, United Recyclers Group, we are an association of over 750 auto recycling locations throughout the US and Canada. And one of our big things is software development to help enhance the sales of used parts within US and Canada. So just to give you a little background, United Recyclers Group and ARA announced earlier this year that we were going to partner together to build out a new quality assurance program. So URG had its own quality assurance program, and ARA, Automotive Recyclers Association, had their own. And we believed that having competing programs was not in the best interest of all of our members. And so we decided to merge ours together to build one program for all of our recyclers. And so we've been building that over the last year, and we're getting pretty close to releasing that early April next year. So why we felt that it was important or it's needed in our industry is it's really time to eliminate the junkyard mentality. You know, we need to start showcasing recyclers on who they really are, which are high-class dismantling operations. And that's really a big initiative of URG's moving forward. I mean, we've even done an all-access feature trying to educate consumers on who our industry is, and we're not junkyards anymore. I think it's really imperative too that now that, you know, I think our industry was a little slower to adopt to electronic ordering, and more companies that we integrate with are moving towards the electronic ordering, as we know businesses and consumers want to purchase online. And with us moving towards more electronic ordering, it's imperative that we adhere to a certain standard. There's so much different quality of parts getting delivered at this point. You've got one recycler that thinks that delivers a part that's an A grade, and another part that delivers that same part that is a C grade to them. And we've got to get more standards into the quality of the parts. You know, when we announced that we were building out this quality assurance program, we had a lot of companies that we integrate with, big MSOs, you know, some really large e-commerce platforms that reached out to us and want to work with us on this program because there's a need to bring confidence back into purchasing used parts. When someone buys a used part online or electronically, they want to know that they're getting the quality part they expect, delivered on time, and, you know, backed by a warranty. One of the key things that we believe will be important in this quality assurance program is we are building out a logo. And our goal is to place that logo by the used parts, whether it's on a marketplace or, you know, on our electronic ordering platforms for recyclers that have completed this program, along with maybe even filtering options, because we believe that when someone sees that part with the logo next to it, that they will have that confidence to be able to purchase that used part. And I think with that logo, then that brings ROI to recyclers and businesses. Recyclers are going to want to be on this program because they're going to want that logo by their part. And they're going to want to keep up with the standards that we're going to have in this program because we are going to make sure that they are compliant with it. Otherwise, they're going to be removed from the program and lose that logo. And so having a consumer see that it's a used part without that logo or versus with the logo, you know which direction that they're going to go, and there's going to be more parts purchased. And, you know, businesses or on electronic platforms benefit from it too, because less returns and credits and higher customer satisfaction rating. So that's really the key piece of why we really wanted to move this direction. Like I mentioned kind of earlier, so some of the basis of this program is originally URG's 7,000, 8,000, and 9,000 program, and then ARA had a gold seal program. So we're merging those two, and then we are using principles and methodologies from other programs that worked before, which, you know, is Six Sigma, which is a really big data platform analytics, and ISO 9001, which is like quality management system, and then going lean, which is eliminating waste and operating efficiencies. So we're going to try to go through and look at all of those different ones, what we already have, and just take out some key things that we felt would add into the quality assurance program. So in order to actually even get into or apply for our quality assurance program, we have a basis that needs to be done. The first one is ARA's CAR certification, which is the environmental aspect of compliance. So recyclers need to go through this program first. And then also other key things that we felt were the basis of our program is recall certification, high voltage certification, and state and local regulatory compliance. So if you're a member of ARA and URG, you need to handle or go through all of these requirements. Once you go through that, you can then apply for our quality assurance program. We think if they've gone through this, then they'll be successful in completing our program. So I'm just going to go over high level some of the standards that we're going to be putting in place as they go through this program. One of the main ones is minimum liability insurance so that we can protect the purchaser. Quality, I keep mentioning it. Quality commitment is going to be huge. So we're going to be analyzing the recycler's inventory. Right now, URG has the data exceptions report where we will take a look at how they grade the part. And if we find discrepancies within the grading, we will kick those parts on a report so that they can fix them. Some examples are if it's an A grade part and it has broken in the comments, or it says not insurance quality. Those are some key pieces that we're going to be looking at and analyzing and making sure that recyclers fix their parts. And there's going to be metrics in place that don't allow them to have so many parts that are getting kicked, because clearly they're not following the standards that we're expecting. And we're going to advance that with ARA and, put in some AI technology with that to really enhance that reporting. Performance monitoring is going to be key. Other members can have a spot where they can do a peer review and submit issues that they have from other recyclers, whether they're slow to pay, their quality isn't as good as we're expecting, and we'll have that full review process. And then we're even having a customer complaint. We're going to be kind of looking everywhere, whether it's Google reviews, Google ratings, the Better Business Bureau, eBay grading. We're going to be analyzing all of that stuff, because those are, if businesses aren't adhering to that and making sure their customers are being taken care of, then they're not a right fit for this program. And then we'll have an online place that members can upload all of their documents that relate to the quality assurance program. So we have them all in one spot, and we can make sure we have a record of everything that they're doing. And a key piece is we're not going to be just analyzing the parts when they get to the door. It's going to be the full life cycle that we're going to have processes in place to make sure that the parts are being taken care of. So it's up to when you purchase the vehicle all the way through inventorying, dismantling, and shipping it, and getting to your consumer or business. Also, we'll have some major analytics into part traceability. So we will be analyzing if the part has a lot of credits and returns, and we'll be able to see that through all of the data that we're getting through all of our members. Delivery standard obviously is going to be very key as well. So we are going to be able to, through access to all of their data, we will be able to see if they are actually delivering the parts on time, and make sure there's metrics in place that they need to adhere to continue. Warranties and returns are huge. So we're going to have minimum requirements that they must at least offer a specific warranty and have a no hassle return policy. And like I kind of mentioned, recalls at the beginning, we're going to have a recall management program where if a recycler has sold a part and it was later recalled, we want to build an automated tool to send an email notification or something to that consumer, letting them know that their part has now been recalled. And then, the key piece is continuous improvement. We want to make sure that this program, we continue to adapt and listen to the companies and the big e-commerce platforms to make sure that we are looking at the right things, to make sure the recyclers are the highest quality that we're expecting. So tools for success, we think that building this management tool where they can come and take a look at all of the documents they've uploaded and look at all of their analytics to see how they're performing for themselves and against other members that have gone through the program. So there's going to be key metrics that they can really make sure that they're living up to where they should be. And then data analysis, I mentioned we're going to be have access to all of their inventory, and we're going to be doing a lot of analytics, through AI and other things to properly see their returns and their warranties.
Oh, Chris, yeah, Chris.
There we go. And peer review, listening to other members. We're going to have training videos. But I really think the key piece to this that's going to make it successful is that we are going to really, really enforce it with clear guidelines. So if recyclers aren't doing it, let's say they finished it the first year, but each year we're going to be auditing it. And if there's not following those same metrics, they're going to be removed from the program and they won't have access to that logo and all of that. So I think that's going to be a key piece, especially for, integrators knowing that we're going to continue to make sure they're at the standard we want them to be at. And that's kind of like the main parts of our quality assurance program.
Great. Thanks, Kristi. I always enjoy a presentation when you answer some of my questions as you go on. It's like, okay, answer that question. Awesome. So I've been generating a few, and I see a couple are coming into the chat function as well. So thank you for that. And we will be getting back to you for sure. And to turn things over to Chris Daglis now, who is going to kind of walk through some of his general experiences, specific experiences, because he's been involved in accreditation for quite a while. So Chris, if you can share that screen and take over.
Okay, you got it there?
It's working perfectly.
Perfect. Okay. Firstly, when I hear Kristi talking or other people talking about accreditation, we had at Canada at the Aura conference last year, Steve, the roundtable, hear about certain things that the collision repairers and insurance companies are looking for. And, it's interesting how much crossover there is and how many, you mentioned the recalls piece, Kristi, and what you're trying to do there. And what we put in place in the UK in 2019, 2020, 2021 is exactly that type of a process whereby you can, check for recalls at the time of inventory, but then trace the part through its life cycle. So there's a lot here. I think one takeaway from my perspective is how much can we actually share with one another, because I'm hearing echoes of what we've done in different regions, and then what the US is doing now, what Australia's looking to do. So I think there's an opportunity to share a lot here, Steve, and that's one of the things that IRT has been, I suppose, trying to achieve for a long time. We mentioned Norwich earlier on before everyone got on, and we had that IRT meeting in Norwich, I believe it was, and we were talking about those types of opportunities there for the industry. So that said, I'm just going to use this as a talking points. Firstly, thanks for having me. I really appreciate the opportunity. I'm going to look at what we've done in different regions, but firstly, I'm using the term accreditation and certification interchangeably, right? I think they're similar things, if not the same. But in Australia, we're looking at it as a certified program, a certified recycle program. In the UK, we built a certified recycle program with the VRA and eBay at the time sponsoring it. But ultimately, it's about trust. The badge that Kristi's talking about is, a badge that represents something, represents trust. And we need to strengthen our brand identity as an industry. When we talk about junkyards and wrecking yards and reused parts as opposed to recycled original equipment. And I took the liberty to rename it a little bit because I think we should be talking about recycled original equipment. I know Aviva in the UK has called it reclaimed parts in the past. So there's a number of ways of referring to these products, but we've got this image still out there, especially to the untrained consumer, that we are wrecking yards. We're dirty, oily junkyards, etc., etc. And it's not necessarily the case. Yes, some of them exist, but the reality is everyone on this call and the quality recycled suppliers, recycled part suppliers out there are very sophisticated business. So we need to change what we stand for as an industry, as an automotive recycling industry. What does that brand mean, and how does that resonate with the consumer? And credit to URG and ARA for pushing that along in the US. Ultimately, insurers are looking for a supply chain. Okay, one of the things that you find at every recycling yard is an abundance of doors, an abundance of fenders or wings or guards, depending on which part of the world you're in. They're always in bulk supply, because we don't cater for that. We don't cater for that, insurance industry well enough. One of the things, Kristi, that you mentioned before was A, B, and C grade. And we talk about, I've got an A grade part, and Chris, you call it an A grade, but really it's a B grade. Well, what does the collision repairer call it? And again, at Aura last year, we had this discussion at the roundtable with the Boyd Group and a couple of the insurers there. I think it was Intact or whoever it was there. They assumed an A grade part was a perfect part, like new. We call an A grade part something that's got less than one credit card worth of damage on it. They're two different interpretations of A. So we need to be clear on what that means. Repairers are looking for consistency, whether they're dealing with recycler 1 or recycler 100. They want to know that A grade means X, whatever that is, and we need to define that properly. They also need to know that if we say it's going to be there tomorrow, it's going to be there tomorrow. So we need certain quality standards and I suppose standards that we can audit to that enable recyclers to deliver that consistency that the collision repair is looking for, because ultimately their cycle time is critical to them. They're measured on cycle time. It's one of their key performance indicators that insurers have for them, is that cycle time and key to key. So we need to be able to provide a consistent service there so that they can trust. Consumers need safe reliability, and I use the two terms safe reliability there on purpose. Safety is critical, and they need a reliable sort of source of product. What happens if something goes wrong? Am I covered? How am I covered? How do I trust that I'm going to be covered? Different when you're working with a vehicle manufacturer. You assume cover. You assume that Toyota is going to take care of it. It's Toyota, or it's Nissan, or it's Mercedes. But the auto recycler up the road, the brand isn't there. We don't really know them. So that we need that branding. We need to be able to give the consumer safety and reliability at the same time. Accreditation or certification, ultimately, it's a visible, verifiable promise. And it, coming back to Kristi's point earlier, the logo or the brand or whatever it is means something. And for example, I'll show a slide in a minute about, the UK scenario where eBay actually built web pages around the certified recycled part and why buy certified recycled and so on. So there's some of the things that I think are really important starting points from a accreditation/certification perspective. It sort of gets our foot in the door to play in the big game, right? So from a global view, I'm going to talk a little bit about the UK experience. In 2019, I worked closely with eBay in the UK, the Vehicle Recyclers Association, a number of insurance companies that engaged, and we brought a whole heap of stakeholders together. The collision repair industry, we had a number of the collision repair groups and independents participate in the development of a certification code or protocol, program, whatever you want to call it. We had obviously automotive recyclers that were part of that. So we worked together with all the different stakeholders to build a program that met the requirements of all of those different stakeholders. And we got really, really strong support, right? We had, at one stage over 100 recyclers had gone through the certification process, and it really drove a lot of growth in the market from a parts supply perspective, but it needs to go the next level, right? And, I was talking to some of the insurers literally over the last couple of days over there, and their goal in 2026 is to drive that next level growth in the UK market with recycled parts. And they feel that the certification program is the foundation point for that. So those certified recyclers hopefully will see added benefit. They've already seen significant growth, year-on-year growth in their, for example, eBay sales. eBay does have a certified recycler badge now for those certified recyclers in the UK, and that's helped them grow their sales. So that's great. In Australia, we started something off probably about 6 or 7 years ago here in Australia with NSF, but then NSF got out of the certification program as far as automotive is concerned. So it dropped off, but certainly over the last 12 months, we've had significant interest from different players. Again, eBay's playing a very, very critical part in that process where they're driving a lot of it. And that's really important. From an auto recycling perspective, it's critical. Kristi mentioned ROI. It's critical that there's a carrot. It's critical that auto recyclers see that if I do and invest in certification, I'm going to get something back for it beyond running a better business, so to speak, right? Whatever that means, documenting my processes and doing things the right way and making sure that I meet all the rules and regulations. So we're driving that at the minute. Our goal is to have a certification program that will be owned by the Auto Parts Recyclers Association of Australia. Our goal is to have the standard written, have it out for industry consultation during January and part of February, taking all the feedback, incorporating it into a document, hopefully having something finished by the end of Q1, by the end of March 2026, at which point potentially can be launched into the market. Obviously, there's a lot that goes with that. There's websites, there's, as Kristi said there's potential videos and training programs and so forth that need to happen. And if anyone's really interested, I know Andy's on the call here, but from a VRA perspective, Vehicle Recyclers Association in the UK, have a look at the VRAC website. There's a heap of documentation there, the standards there. You can register and watch the videos, and after the videos, there's a bit of a training session after that for all your people to go through. So that is well worth the effort. I believe it's still free to do that, and you'll get a taste of what the VRA's done there. They've done a really good job of it. Ultimately, why, how, and what? The why we've spoken about, to lift the brand of the automotive recycling industry and to help those that are doing a really good job actually get rewarded for that and be highlighted for that. How? We're doing it with the industry. This is not something that APRA's doing by themselves, or eBay's doing by themselves, or the Motor Traders Association are doing by themselves, or the recyclers are doing by themselves. It's something that we are working on together. We've got a working group that meets on a weekly basis now, running through the certification program and building it out. We're using bits and pieces from all over the world. I mean, let's not reinvent the wheel, right? We did a lot of work in the UK with the VRA standard. We'll use a lot of that structure to put together an Australian structure. And that's working really well at the minute. So we've got collision repairers and that, we've got insurers, we've got auction houses, we've got obviously recyclers, we've got eBay, we've got the association that's part of that working group. So that's coming along really nicely. Ultimately, it's going to be a standard that will represent, that will help auto recyclers represent themselves as professional organizations that can be trusted. All right, the brand promise. Ultimately, we want to be professional. We want to be seen as reliable. We want to be seen as trusted, and quality needs to resonate throughout whatever, when people think of a certified recycler in Australia or anywhere in the world for that matter, they need to think quality. I've just taken a couple of screenshots from eBay in the UK. This is something that they've built. So this is on their web page, one of the web pages. Explore certified recycled parts with confidence, right? And then you've got the why buy certified recycled, trusted sellers, quality assured, eco-friendly, and purchase protection. Obviously, that's what eBay brings to it. So there's a lot of marketing that's gone into it. In Australia, we've already run one session where we've had trade and publications attend. eBay sponsored that, did it all. They put on a great show. We had a heap of people at that, probably about 100 people, maybe a little bit less than that, maybe about 80 people attended that. But it was an opportunity for the industry to tell a story about where it's going with recycled parts and the certification program. And that was really well published. So that's the type of thing that's happened overseas. And I think, again, it lends itself to that certified brand promise that we're looking to achieve. Okay, ultimately, certification is an extra work. A lot of people think it's work, it's extra work. Well, anything you do that's of high quality, you need to put effort into. But ultimately, it's the difference between surviving and leading, in my view. We can survive and we can be regulated, or we can lead and we can self-regulate as an industry. And when I say self-regulate, a certification program, in my view, and I think, Kristi, you guys are going down this path now in the US, needs to be independent to a degree, so that it's independently audited. And in the UK, it's an independent. There's two auditing firms that were. An RFI went out to them. They submitted their applications, or their tenders, if for want of a better word, their proposals. They were reviewed, and two organisations were chosen, and they go out and do an annual review and audit of each facility in order for them to be recertified on an annual basis. That independence is critical. So yeah, that's all I've got. Hopefully that helps give a bit of a global view of where things are at. But it's a really exciting time for the industry, and I think we should embrace it as automotive recyclers, and we should embrace the support that's being driven by those in the industry, such as eBay, that are really investing heavily in our industry. Steve, over to you.
Thank you, Chris. That was awesome. A quick question to both of our presenters, whether there was any questions that you have of one another. Chris sort of commented on Kristi. Kristi, do you have any questions directly of Chris at this point in time?
No, I think what they're doing in Australia and what he's done in the UK is very similar to what we're trying to do in the US and Canada. So I think it's just imperative, like he said, that we get everyone together, the key stakeholders, to really make this successful.
Okay. One of the questions that I had, mainly for Kristi, because I think Chris touched on it a little bit, is what kind of marketing plans are going to exist behind that branding? It's one thing to put a logo up on a website. How do people understand what that is? And do you have any ideas on what level is going to be required to support that branding?
Yeah, so URG's formed, NARA formed a committee right now that's actually just started a couple months ago, which is the first part is the logo piece. But the second piece is going to be how do we educate consumers and MSO shops and all of that. And it's going to be a big marketing push of ours. But I think the key piece is like what Chris showed on that eBay page, where we have to really educate consumers. Like when they click on that logo, they can go to this page and really understand that this is the quality that they're going to get when they purchase a part from one of these recyclers. So we're just in the early phases of figuring out that marketing plan, but we know it's a big piece to getting this successful. But also on top of that, it's also not just consumers, but like I mentioned, MSOs and body shops and mechanic shops. We're already communicating with a lot of them and having them be part of our discussions to make sure that we're doing it right as we go forward with this.
Chris, is there anything else, I'm sure there is, beyond the kind of branding piece? Either again UK or Australia. We love it that the fact that the UK is there and Australia is kind of moving towards that. Anything either from the VRA experience or what you anticipate on the Australian side for that communication education piece?
I think it's a really important bit, but it's also a very difficult bit, right? Because it requires significant funding in order to get that widespread communication out to the market, right? Multinationals spend billions of dollars a year doing it, so they can create that brand. What we're trying to do is create the brand. The best way to achieve that is through the industry. And one of the things that I have a lot of discussions with collision repairers and insurers, sometimes at the same time, other times independently, is around, how do I get the people that have the touch point with the consumer every day are the collision repairers, right? or the motor mechanics. So how do we get them to embrace this standard? So having them as part of the working group, for example, is really important, because we want the collision repairer to own the document, the standard, as much as anyone else. It needs to be a lot of what they need, not just what insurers need or what repair mechanics need or what recyclers need. It's about what they need from us as a supplier, as a supply chain. So if they're happy with it, and if they buy into what recycled parts can offer them, then they're going to support it. One of the things, then we have the argument of, yeah, but insurance companies don't allow us enough margin so that we can actually use the parts. So it's not incentivized. And Steve and Wally, I know we've had this discussion. And that's where we have these discussions with insurers and show them some solutions to that, where they and the repairer can win out of that. And when we did this in Australia a number of years ago, what we found was the issue around recycled parts being returned because they had a little scratch on them, or they didn't want to use them, or there wasn't enough margin in it, disappeared, right? It wasn't an issue anymore. The collision repairer was pulling the parts in rather than us trying to push it on them, because their margin was right. Okay, so it's not a short-term thing. It's not an overnight, flick the switch and we're going to solve the world's problems. But it is about getting all these different stakeholders together to help us sell recycled original equipment parts as a great alternative in the repair process. And they touch and feel the customer on a daily basis. They see them, they communicate with them. So they're the people that we want to have signs up around certified recyclers in their foyers to say, we're proud to use certified recycled parts, ask us about them, as opposed to don't ask us about them. In fact, we'll tell you that we're using dirty old recycled parts in your car because I'd rather use a new one, right? So we want to get beyond that.
Yeah.
I was going to say, Steve, we've been talking a lot about the VRA over in the UK, where there's been a scheme now running for a good number of years. So I was just thinking if we maybe want to get Andy in on this call a little bit, because he's now the chairman of the VRA, and maybe he can sort of give us, how it has been received and how it's grown. And before we might bring in Andy, there's been a report come out from the body shops in the UK, and one of the questions they asked was, how does the VRA certification influence where you buy green parts? Last year in 2024, it was 36% influence. Well, this has grown to this year to 45%. So you can see how that value and how it is being recognized. So if you can give Andy permission, maybe Andy can sort of say, what have the vehicle recyclers themselves experienced, and the body shops, the insurance, because we are on a journey. We put this in, but we never know. We can do all the background checks, we can do all the work, we can analyze it, but until it's running, we've got to, and when it's live as such, then we've got to sort of adjust a little bit and do that. So maybe Andy, if you can come in and just say how it's been working for the recyclers, that would be great.
Yeah, certainly. I mean, Chris has already said a lot of good stuff about VRAC, because he was fairly heavily involved in setting this all up in the first place, and he did an amazing job. Actually, your description just now is slightly incorrect of that question, Hayden, but I'll come back to that. But the Auto Body Professionals Club have released their State of the Industry report today, and some of the questions about green parts. Do you ever fit green recycled parts? Now, in 2019, 57% of respondents said yes. In 2025, 91% said yes. So you've seen that massive growth in respondents from ABP, from 57 to 91% from 2019 to 2025. And percentage of total parts that are green parts, in 2023, it was 2.5%. It's now 4.1%. Now that's from nothing. That is from zero, because in 2019 we had no recycled parts used in collision repair. Volume of green parts used by your body repair business, In 2021, it was 57%. In 2025, 75%. So volumes has increased. But one of the things that is really worrying for me, looking at the figures, is people who are aware of the VRA certification scheme, that they know about it. In 2024, it was 56% of respondents. In 2025, 69% of respondents are aware of the certification scheme. But then, did the certification scheme influence where they bought their green parts from? 2024, 36% said no. It did not influence. In 2025, 45% of respondents said no. Now, that increase for me is a concern, because what it means is that they are buying non-certified parts. They're not using the certified scheme to buy their green parts. And that is a worry for me. And that's something that we really need to look at. We haven't got certification right. Certification has a long way to go. Chris mentioned it himself, talking to the insurers, next level growth in 2026 were the words that Chris used. And that's where we need to be. We've got a foothold. We've got a stepping stone. We need to move to the next level. And exactly what Kristi and also what Chris have said today is so relevant to the VRA and to the UK, because we have to take it to that next level. We need to be consistent in what we do. We need to have consistent grading. We need to have part supply. If we say it's going to be there tomorrow, it is there tomorrow. If we've given a description of how that part is and what that condition that part is, that's how it arrives. Yeah. So that is really significant. And that's where we need to go. And there's a new team in place in eBay UK who are looking at this. The original team that Chris was dealing with have either departed or they're currently on maternity leave or things of that nature. And there's a new team, and they came to our VRA AGM last week and did a short presentation afterwards to the members who were there, basically saying what they're going to be doing next year to drive this next level growth. It's looking good.
Okay, thanks, Andy. Thanks for sort of just asking you on the supply there a bit. I got lots of questions, but there's lots of other people asking questions, and we don't want this just to be sort of just us speaking. So if I can just ask some of the questions which I've coming through. One is from Stephen Tapner. Hope I pronounced that right. And this was from Kristi, but I'm sure Chris would like to come in as well. You're going to be looking at a great deal of information from members participating. What mechanism will you put in place to satisfy participants that this data is handled confidently? I think that's a really good point.
Confidentially.
Yes, confidentially, yes.
So,
Kristi?
excuse me. URG already, I think we've established a trust with our recyclers. We are the data protectors for them in the US and Canada. We built out what's called a URG Net Control Center, where we have full transparency for them to know exactly where their inventory is going, what fields are going where for other different companies. So we are the big facilitator of their data, and we take pride in making sure that it's protected, because our big initiative, 5 years ago was all these different companies coming in and taking the data and doing who knows what. We needed to stop that, and that's kind of why URG built this control center, and will continue to do that. We have full transparency to our members on what's going to happen with their data and who gets to see it.
I think one area where the US is well advanced is in that area, Hayden, from a data perspective. Really, the majority of auto recyclers in the US function using interchange, and that enables a whole heap of different things to happen in a consistent sort of data-driven way. I'm not sitting here saying that the interchange is perfect or anything like that, but it is consistent, and that's a critical piece. And I think that's, Australia, we've got 250 odd facilities that use interchange, the Australian interchange. So, they're using a common denominator. The UK, it's probably 40 facilities now using that common denominator in the UK interchange. But then you've got a whole heap of others that don't use an interchange. It's a lot more sort of disparate away or fragmented. So that's I think the US is well advanced there, and URG certainly does have a very strong trust, brand there as far as what they do with the data.
Okay, thanks, Chris. There's a statement from Carl, maybe it's a question, and it's going to mention two letters which we're always talking about. But before that, the question I want to ask you, Kristi, you was talking about, if people are not delivering the right parts, they might be struggling, they might be sort of switched off the scheme. Are you sort of having a sort of a support system where you try to sort of go into their yard to see how they can make things a bit better before the actual switch off? Is there some, peer support or something like that? Is that something that's being thought about?
Yeah, we're actually building out processes as like a base ground or something for them to look at that a current recycler, one of our committee members, follows to adhere to those delivery standards. So they'll at least have something to kind of go off of successful ones that are delivering parts properly and all of that, and then how to build on that. So that's going to be part of all of our documentation process, from even, like I mentioned, the whole life cycle from purchasing the vehicle all the way to getting it to their door. But we are going to provide baselines for all of those different processes so people know where to at least start from, but then to get above that as they continue through the program.
Yeah, and I know, Chris, you sort of said with the VRA that there were sort of training programs and this, that, and the other. And I think this is really good because it just shows what our industry is about. It is all about supporting everyone. We're only as strong as our weakest members, but we have to work together to be able to make this happen. So it's really encouraging that we're not leaving people behind. We're there to support and to help people out.
And we'd be
Yeah,
crazy
and
not to.
to
Yeah.
that point, like that's kind of why we're trying to do these baselines, is we want to help, smaller recyclers all the way to very big progressive yards. We want this to be something that any size recycler can come in and get through the program and succeed. And a lot of these smaller ones don't have all these processes in place or baselines, and that's why we're developing them to get them to that point so that we can successfully get any size yard through our
And for
program.
the smaller yards, it could look quite overwhelming. They want to get on with it, but they just need where to start and just to be able to reach out and to ask without sort of feeling small, that they can do that. So
Yeah, and we've even
that's
talked
encouraging.
about, we've got the baseline, and then we can even show some that are way above where, recyclers can strive to get to that point, as they continue to enhance their processes. So there's ways
Yeah.
to try to continuously help them improve.
That's excellent. So encouraging to hear, although I'm not surprised. So I'm going to go to what Carl has said. I'm just going to read this out. While grading descriptions matter, images communicate grades far more efficiently and effectively. With major advances in image recognition and AI, there we go, there's the letters, our current focus, we're significantly improving the grading process for our clients, the recyclers, by using AI. This is where we're doubling down on investment. So AI is everywhere. We're using it as a tool and how we see it. So how do you see AI is going to become a part of the accreditation schemes? Anything we need to be looking out for? Are we rushing in too quick? How are we going to do this? And how can we embrace it so it's for the recyclers themselves? And I'm sure both of you are on this like already, but what are you doing? Where are you seeing the future? And and are you excited about being able to use AI because of the advantages that it can bring?
Kristi, ladies before gentlemen.
Thanks. No, AI is going to be imperative. Part images are key. He was 100% correct that the best way to find damage on a part is by looking at the part image itself, right? I think it's going to be a key piece for our enhancing our data exceptions report by analyzing the images, looking for the damage via AI, and seeing if they're grading that properly and kicking those parts. And it's going to be a huge piece. I mean, AI is, I think in 2026, going to be a very big piece to our industry and helping with the grading of the parts.
Yeah.
And I'd imagine, sorry, Chris, yes, please, Chris, sorry.
No, no, please, you go.
And I was just saying, Chris, you got the URG conference coming up next year. What date is that? Do you know?
That was Christy you were asking.
Yeah,
Oh,
Christy, sorry.
I was
Christy
like,
and Chris.
Chris,
See, I
come
got it
on.
more. Yeah.
It's weekend of May
Okay. And I
in
suppose
Denver,
AI is
Colorado. Yeah.
and AI is going to have quite a sort of is going to feature quite a lot at that conference.
Yeah, we plan to have quite a few different sessions going over AI from a recycling standpoint or just inside your own business piece. So yeah, it's going to be pretty big topic.
Great. And Chris, we've had some great conversations privately about AI. So I know that how are you seeing AI becoming an integral part when we are looking at certification and accreditation? And what do you maybe might be doing or seeing where we're going with it?
Yeah, I suppose I'm a little bit biased. Obviously, I think AI is going to be a big part of where things go. We've with the APRA sort of committee that we've formed, the working group for the certification program, we're actually going through the grading piece at the minute. And a number of you will know Laurie Beecham, who's been on the ARA board for a number of years as one of the affiliates and so forth, and been involved with APRA for a long time. But he's making a strong case for why don't we use image recognition and damage recognition to enable us to grade our parts. That's something I've been saying, and I've said it to Kristi and said it to a number of people for a number of years. Well, at least for the last 12 months, I should say. Where I think that's where it's got to go, right? I know we've got our grading systems, units and A, B, and C, and in this location and that location, but ultimately we need a standard way of determining damage, and the best way to do that is using those types of tools. Now, full transparency, we're developing some stuff now through our APS digital arm. So the idea there is that you take, basically you take a video of the vehicle, and as you're taking the video of the vehicle, it's capturing the images of each and every part, 2 or 3 what do you call it, shots per second as you're going around the vehicle, and it's grading the parts. So I'd be surprised if there's nothing out there within the next 6 months.
Okay, that's great. So AI is here, and let's use it, I suppose, and see what advantages it can bring. That's all the questions that have come through so far, and thanks very much for sort of with the people who've done that. Steve, do you want to come in? Do you want to sort of just looking at getting closing comments or something, or any more questions?
Related to the grading question, because that's what we're finding as one of the major kind of pushbacks from the stakeholders that we're engaging with. Just the ARA damage codes, I think, work within our industry because there's been some level of education, but that perception outside the industry is they have no idea what we're talking about. And it's that gap between what we say, what they expect, that is creating a lot of returns on it all. And I think we flagged with you, Kristi, that it's like, is somebody looking at grading because the current state of it isn't working, and in a way it's kind of masking some of the problems financially and whatnot with transactions. And yeah, we've sort of seen some AI things. We were at Intax town halls all across Ontario, and they were doing AI in the claims process, and we're kind of looking at it going, yeah, we're just the opposite side of that in terms of the objectivity that AI can bring. Kristi, who is going to oversee this process? Ultimately, if you deliver the benefits of, the brand is going to create volume. Who's going to be overseeing who's in, who's out, who needs to be on some sort of other paths? Is that going to be the URG board? Is it going to be some kind of joint venture? And are you going to have stakeholders directly involved in that process?
So it's committee members that are 2 from URG, 2 from ARA, and 1 jointly selected, which is going to be the chair of it. So that there's, obviously it's 2 different companies, making sure it's correct. So we have the committee to adhere to everything and make sure that everyone's following it. And then obviously we'll have staff involved on both sides of it to enforce and do all the building of the reports and all of that. So it'll be a combined thing between URG and ARA, but our boards will be separated from it.
And Kristi, the VRAC, is that run as a committee of VRA, or again, who's overseeing either improvements and or gaps that exist?
Again, I'll probably hand over to Andy in a second. There is a what we call a technical committee that reviews the standard, and that's made up of the certification bodies, VRA, insurers, collision repairer, basically making sure that it remains relevant, right? And any new, so when we started it, EVs weren't a big thing. 5 years down the track, EVs are a significant thing, especially in the UK. So there's an EV piece that comes into it now, right? So that needs to be added through. So there's a number of things there that happen. But I think, Andy, I think you're probably in a better spot to sort of answer that from a VRA perspective.
Yeah, it's a little bit difficult at the moment because we're in a bit of a transition period. And many of you may know Chaz Ambrose, who was our secretary for 12 years, who resigned in October. And I was acting chairman. I'm now chairman of the VRA as of a week ago, full chairman. And we're now putting in place some restructuring around that. So we will be getting heavily involved with an executive committee and a head of certification. And our head of or heads of certification will be taking that forward with the technical team and eBay and the insurers and everybody else over the coming 6, 12, 24, 48 months or whatever, however long we need it. So yeah, that's where we are at the moment. And we're already having discussions about how we improve the certification, the grading, and everything else around this whole thing, and take it as on a say it's so good I wrote it down, Chris. Next level growth.
Oh. Yes, I think the important thing here is that these standards aren't stagnant. They're not flat files. They're a living organism, if I can put it that way, right? And we need to treat it as that. They're going to change. We need to do things differently. We need to keep on improving on them. The grading is going to change. The types of vehicles we're dealing with are going to change. But I think one of the critical things here is that we need to embrace that change, and we need to say, okay, we've got vehicles here that have got certain technologies in them that didn't exist even 2 years ago. We're not going to be selling engines in 15 years' time. What are we going to be selling? Are we going to be selling these ECUs and these door mirrors and these lane protection sensors and all whatever else they're going to come out with, right? That we don't even know they're coming out with yet. We can sit here and say, well, maybe not, because they're safety items. Or we may be able to say, well, hold on, what if we did things differently? What if our certification program developed a standard for the reuse of sensors? Okay, what does that mean? Does that mean we need to do a pre-dismantle scan of the vehicle to identify which sensors have error codes? Yes or no? Maybe. How do we document that? How do we store those sensors? How do we inventory those sensors? And from Kristi, from a US perspective, what interchange do we use, right? There isn't any interchange for these sensors. So these are a number of things that need to be considered. And, if we don't think about them now, we're going to find ourselves sort of scratching our heads, pulling our hair out. Andy, maybe not for you and I, but certainly others will be pulling their hair out because, or Steve, you too, by the way.
Getting there.
So, we need to start thinking about this now and putting measures in place to make sure that we're dealing with it and we've dealt with it, in 15 years' time when it becomes a real problem. Right? Because I think it's a great opportunity if we act, if we do something. I think certification's the starting point.
Super. I want to thank both of our speakers and Hayden and everybody who's been involved. I think there's been just a tremendous amount of information
A lot.
passed, and hopefully it will generate some further ideas and upgrades and updates. And these two, Kristi and Chris, are both fabulous communicators, and they attend international conferences. So plug for Aura. I think they're both going to be there in end of March. And yeah, we got AI on the agenda, and lots of insurers and repairers. But yeah, I want to thank you for sharing your time with us and sharing your information. Hayden, any last words?
No, it's been fascinating. As much as I enjoy arranging these IRT things, I think I do it for myself because I learn so much myself. But I think it's just so encouraging what we're hearing at the moment. We are looking forward, as Chris said, let's not stagnate. Let's keep on moving. Just because we've got so far doesn't mean that we should rest on our laurels. We have to move with the times and stuff, and we're embracing that. So I think that's really encouraging. And I know lots of countries are at different points in this. So I hope hearing what's happening with the URG and elsewhere, it sort of inspires them. And I hope they do reach out to Chris and Kristi and to Andy as well to ask those questions, and that we can all work together for the common good for vehicle recycling, the importance that it has.
Super. And Sean and Hayden will do their great summary of what this is all about as an article and as social media. We will post the recording, and we now have touched about 400 different people around the world through the various webinars that I'll be pushing that out, along with some contact information for you too if they want to reach out directly on things. So that's a wrap. Thank you very much.
Can I just interrupt? You haven't done your usual end, Steve, is just to say that the IRT is for everybody. And if you want us to be covering any topics, please get in touch and let us know, and we'll do our best to find the right people to cover those topics for them.
Thank you, Hayden.
Sorry, Steve.
You're awesome. Okay. See you guys.
Thanks,
Appreciate
everyone.
Bye, guys.
Everyone. Bye.
See you guys. Thank you.
Sure.